Hello, LinkedIn, and welcome to Top Startups Live. Today, you'll get an inside look into LinkedIn's top startups list, live from New York's Empire State Building. I'm Caroline Fairchild, your host for today's show. What startups in the U.S. do people want to work at right now? That's what we're here to discuss. We're going inside today's 50's hottest young companies and learning who exactly their leaders are looking to hire. The startups that make the cut reveal some interesting trends about today's emerging and expanding industries. First, co-founder and CEO of travel startup Away, Steph Korey, will join us right here in the studio to discuss her unique approach to hiring. Then we'll head to Sunnyvale, California to hear from the co-founder of e-scooter company Lime, Toby Sun. We'll end the hour talking with Upfront Ventures partner Aditi Maliwal, who will walk us through some trends on the list, including an uptick in the number of startups coming out of Los Angeles. Along the way, we want to hear from you. What questions do you have about this year's top startups list? Let us know in the stream and we'll get your questions answered live right here on today's show. For now, let's dive into the list itself. Computer software company Snowflake tops this year's list, followed by cannabis startup Dosist, Internet of Things provider Samsara, food delivery app DoorDash, and fintech firm Brex. Most of the startups on the list are located in the San Francisco Bay Area, followed by New York City and LA. In total, these companies have raised nearly $17 billion in capital, and in the past year, over 11,000 positions were filled at the top startups. There are thousands of open jobs available at these companies right now. The top startups list is based on billions of actions taken by our more than 600 million members on the platform over the past year. But how exactly do we pick our top startups? We broke it down for you. This is LinkedIn Top Startups, an annual ranking of the hottest startups to work for. Our team of LinkedIn journalists and data scientists spent months uncovering the most sought-after startups in 12 different countries. So, how does a startup make the cut? First, we define what a startup is. To be considered, a company has to be independent and privately held, have at least 50 employees, be 7 years old or younger, and be headquartered in the local country. Then it's all about the data. We look at billions of actions taken by more than 600 million members on LinkedIn over a 12-month period and focus on 4 core pillars. First, how fast are these companies growing? In fact, to make the cut, the company must have at least a 15% growth in headcount over the past year. We also dig into how often LinkedIn members are looking at these businesses and the employees who work there. Then we look at jobs. What jobs at these startups are people looking at and applying to? And finally, where does the talent come from? Startups on our list are known for luring professionals away from top companies. Then we crunch those numbers, and the result is a ranking of the most sought-after startups this year. Once we look at that ranking, we dive into the leadership of these young firms. And the number of female-led startups on our list is on the rise. Up from 14% in 2018 and 16% in 2019, the number of top startups with female CEOs is more than 3 times that in the Fortune 500. Joining us now in the studio to get an inside look into how Away is thinking about hiring is co-founder and CEO Steph Korey. Steph, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Away is on the rise on this year's list as well. The last time that we sat down about a year ago, you told me that Away, which sells a lot of luggage, actually doesn't look to hire people from the luggage industry. Why is that?
Yeah, we have, you can count on one hand the number of people at our company that have ever worked in the luggage industry before. And really the reason is we're trying to change, first of all, the entire travel industry, not just luggage. And 2, we're really innovative. So we're trying to do things in a way where they haven't been done before. So we look to draw people from all different industries who have a really creative mindset to say, how can we do things in a way that really none of these industries have thought about it?
And you're drawing a ton of people, over 170 employees you've hired just in the last year alone. Where are these people coming from? What are some of the functions that you're hiring for, and where are they coming from before if it's not luggage?
You know, we're really hiring across the entire business. We've hired 170 people over the last year. We have 100 open positions right now, and it's everywhere. It's operations, marketing, product development, finance, retail, international. It's really across the whole business. And we just, you know, we hire people for like really more mindset than experience of I'm going to be creative. I'm going to think of a new way to tackle a problem. I'm going to identify an opportunity like without it having been super obvious that it was right there. So, while we have some people who come from e-commerce, we have people from media, we have people from advertising, we have people from all over the place. And it's really that sort of creativity and innovation that everyone has in common across the company.
And attacking a problem is exactly what you and your co-founder Jen did with starting this company to begin with. Talk to us about how Away has grown so much and what the problem was that you were originally trying to solve.
Yeah, so the original genesis actually is funny. Jen was traveling and her carry-on broke. And she posted on Facebook asking for a recommendation to replace it, and no one could suggest something that they loved to her. So she called me sort of being like, this is weird. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized travel is this amazing thing. It has the ability to take you outside your comfort zone, to discover new places, new cultures, make new connections. And that investment in sort of broadening your mindset through new experiences is something that was really personally important to the two of us, and honestly important to everyone around us too. And you saw these travel companies, these travel product companies, they weren't thinking about the experience of travel and what that can do for your life. So we really built the whole business around that and the products that can empower you on those experiences.
And that problem solver mentality, how do you screen for that? Are there interview questions that you have as kind of a go-to, or what's the Away kind of interview process like?
So we have a really robust interview process. we now have a deck that we send candidates at the very beginning of the interview process to make them aware of what they're getting themselves into, because it's not like a light lift, easy process. We just have such talented, thoughtful, smart people on the team, and we know to set them up for success, we need to surround them with more really talented, smart, thoughtful people. So for most roles, you'll go through a panel of different interviews, you'll prepare a presentation, you'll present to a group, they'll ask you questions about what you've prepared, and the presentation prompts a lot of the time involve like when were you in a seemingly insurmountable situation and how did you handle it? Because at a quickly growing startup where things change so quickly like us, that ability to sort of be nimble, handle ambiguity, stay pretty unflappable and be like, you know what, we're just going to figure this out is so important.
Mm-hmm. And one of your first big hires, when the company was still pretty small, was your chief people officer, which is uncommon. I speak to a lot of founders who are really excited about getting that marketing person in or that branding guru. Mm-hmm. But you told me that that chief people officer role was really important to you. Why was that?
Yeah, so our first really senior hire was Erin, our head of people, who is spectacular. And to me, it was so simple that should be our first senior hire, because your people are everything. Like everything about how your business is going to do tomorrow, in a week, in a month, in a year, in a decade is all about the people you have around the table, how you build your culture, how you cultivate learning and development on the team, how you sort of engage and grow people through the organization. So I have loved partnering with Erin over the last couple of years on really ensuring, it starts with the talent acquisition pipeline. So making sure that we are bringing in a super diverse pool of candidates across every role, really building diversity and inclusion into everything we do. More than 40% of our company comes from underrepresented ethnic backgrounds, which is something we're really proud of. And when you think about, for us being a travel company, our customer is people who travel. It's people all over the world. So we want our team to be a true reflection of the customers we're trying to reach. And we know that like the best ideas and the best problem solving come when you have that really robust diversity of perspective around the table.
And you and I both know from studies that the early genesis of the company, what the company looks like then, is pretty predictive of what it's going to look like as you continue to scale and grow. What were some best practices that you put into place early on to ensure that Away really was an inclusive place for everyone to work?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said that, because that's actually the first piece of advice I give to new startups that have 10, 20 people and they're looking to grow. You can't wait to do culture later. Like whatever you build from the beginning, you're stuck with it. Like that's going to stay with you. It's really hard to make major changes like that. So from the very beginning, we really prioritized, if we have a job opening, we need to make sure we're interviewing candidates from a ton of different backgrounds. We need to make sure that our interview panel is really diverse so that no matter who the candidate is, they're interviewing with someone where they're like, oh, I can identify with someone who I'm meeting with. I feel like I would feel comfortable here and feel welcome here. And yeah, I think really more than anything, it's, put people first.
Right.
Think about ask people what their career goals are. Ask them what they would be excited to do and figure out a way to find that. What I always say is you want to find an overlap between what someone's good at, what they're interested in, and what the company needs. And I think so many companies make the mistake of, they miss what the person's interested in. But if you can get that three-way overlap, like that's how you'll have people who are really excited, really excelling, growing and succeeding beyond anything they could have imagined anywhere else.
And we talk a lot about startups. It's kind of this mentality of growth for growth's sake, just scale at all costs, try and get as big as possible. But I'm noticing a shift where a lot of founders are also thinking more thoughtfully around growth. Have there been moments where, there's been a decision you've had to make in the short term that's really helped away in the long term when it comes to making sure that they're scaling well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had a number of points throughout the company's history where we very easily could have grown a lot faster, but we purposely tempered it to make sure we could be thoughtful about the team we're building, the culture we're building, and not get ahead of our skis. So we've actually been, I think one example is store openings. So we opened our first store a few years ago. And over the last 2 years, we've opened 7 stores. We could have done a lot more than that, but we wanted to make sure we got the communications right, the culture right, the customer experience right, really dial everything. And I think you're seeing more of that, startups realizing that, for us, when our mission is to inspire people to live a life of new experiences and make that really seamless for them. We think that there are hundreds of millions of people out there that we can do that for, but in due time, because we want to make sure we get it really right.
Right. And for those who are watching with us on the stream right now and may want to work at Away, what's something unique about working at Away that you'd say is different than another tech startup or perhaps, your experiences in corporate America? Yeah,
I think one of the things that I've never seen anywhere else and that I constantly hear from people when they join the team that they're so surprised by it is the extent to which we sort of empower decision-making at all levels of the organization. So I think at a lot of companies, it's kind of like the senior people making all the decisions. And we actually say the more senior you are, the fewer decisions you should be making. Because whoever's closest to the work should be making the calls, right? That's the person who really knows what's going on. So sometimes when we have new people who are, a few years into their career, at the beginning it can feel a little scary or a little uncomfortable. Like I'm being given the right to make all of these decisions myself. But once you get used to it, comfortable, you realize it makes a lot of sense and it makes work much more fulfilling.
Practically, how do you instill that culture for someone who's just coming in and doesn't really understand that you and Jen are not going to call all the shots, you're actually looking for their opinion? How do you kind of lead by example with that?
Yeah, so it starts with leading by example for us, and it's also like people manager training across the organization. Essentially, if I'm your manager and you come to me and you say, there's this situation, what do you want me to do? Or like, do you think we should do X or Y? What I'm going to say back to you is, what do you think we should do? Which decision would you suggest? And then you'll tell me which one you think, and you'll explain why, and you'll realize that you had the tools to make that decision all along.
I'm sure a lot of people watching in on the stream right now would love to have a manager who asks that question more option. I'm going to go ahead and take some questions from the stream. And if you're tuning in right now, I'm sitting down with Steph Korey. She is the co-founder and CEO of Away. We want to hear from you. What questions do you have for Steph about working at Away, about scaling a startup? Please let us know in the stream. We'll get them answered right here on today's show. Okay, so this question comes from Wang. She wants to know, a job at a startup comes with risks. How do you ensure employees and potential candidates have a game plan to bring the company and brand to the next level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I would argue a job at any company comes with risks. Risks that, is the company going to do well? Am I going to like my manager? Am I going to like the coworkers I'm assigned to work with? Am I going to find myself doing interesting work? I think the nice thing about joining a startup is there's a lot more flexibility to kind of choose your own path and identify opportunities and take advantage of them. And, I have plenty of friends who've worked at startups that did not, the company didn't become super successful, but the learning they gained from that experience was so helpful in their next career moves, because you learn a lot of what to do, what not to do, and that's almost more helpful learning than being at only really successful startups. So I think no matter what your work experience is, if you go into the mindset of an open mind, I'm going to take initiative for my career and I'm going to learn a lot, that you'll be successful no matter what.
Right. And another question I am seeing popping up in the stream right now is pretty related. What are some corporate skills that translate well at a startup? Are there any? How do you go about training your new employees to develop skills that fit well with your collaborative nature?
Yeah, so I think one of the things actually we see people who come from more corporate backgrounds be really strong in is communication. Because I think when you're in a corporate environment, a lot of the time you only have one shot to communicate something, and it's in front of a certain committee, or your PowerPoint presentation will be reviewed for 10 seconds, and if you don't get the point across, you might get lost. So we definitely see people coming in from more established backgrounds, and they're just like very sharp communicators, and we actually encourage them to try to teach the people with less career background or more startup career background some of those skills, because they're so valuable. And then in terms of how we guide people to thrive in our collaborative nature, it's one of our core values is that we're in it together, and it's really to embody the mindset that you're not a one-person team. Like, we all have the same goal, we're all trying to do the same thing, and we're all going to help each other to get there. And if you can embrace that mindset, actually the sum of all the parts is so much greater than each part individually.
Right, in it together. That's a great way to think about it. One of the things I did want to ask you about is that Away does keep up on LinkedIn a job opening that just name your own job. You just want people to tell you what they think they can bring to Away.
Yep.
Why do you do that?
Sometimes we don't know what we need, or someone is watching our company and they see that there's something we could be doing that maybe we haven't thought of, and if we started doing it, it would be really great for us, and they fill out that job application, and we've hired a bunch of people from that opening.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that we've had that up the whole time, because the type of person who applies to that's that innovative mindset that we're looking for.
Right, exactly, and innovation is so key. Before I let you go, Steph, what's something that's unique, exciting happening at Away right now that the people on the stream might want to hear about?
I think one thing I'm really excited about is, from the start of the business, we always thought of ourselves as a travel brand. Our first product was luggage, and over the past year or two, we've expanded into some other types of products like bags. But in the next year, you'll see us expanding into really much more of the perfect version of everything you need for travel, not just things you put your stuff in. So I'm excited to bring that to life. Our customers have been such an active part of providing feedback in that, and we have a killer team working on it. So it's going to be really awesome.
Well, Steph, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Right now, we're going to learn more about another trend on the list, mobility. Several startups on this year's list are changing the way we get around, whether it's on scooters, trucks, or driverless cars.
A decade ago, Uber changed the way we move around. Now hundreds of startups are popping up every year, trying to revolutionize the way we think about mobility. So it's no surprise that about a dozen of these businesses made it onto LinkedIn's top startups list, a ranking of young companies that are growing fast and attracting talent in 2019.
Rapid change in modes, the rapid change in services, the technology that's being applied to this is unprecedented. And that's why people are throwing money at transportation.
In fact, in the last 12 months, mobility startups have raised more than $6 billion in funding and have hired almost 5,000 employees across the US. And that's not including the almost 1,400 jobs these companies are trying to fill.
30 years ago, we found that the best and the brightest were going into moving money around. And about 20 years ago, it was about moving information around. And today, it's about moving people and goods around.
Welcome back to Top Startups Live, where we're giving you an inside look into where the U.S. workforce wants to work right now. I'm Caroline Fairchild, your host for today's show. We just heard about the increase in startups focused on mobility. Now we want to hear from you. What questions do you have about landing a job at these top employers? Let us know in the stream, and we'll get your questions answered live right here on today's show. Joining us now from our studio in Sunnyvale is one of the founders of the e-scooter movement himself, Lime co-founder Toby Sun. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on being on the list this year, Toby. We know that there has been a ton of hype around scooters, e-scooters in particular, but why do people want to work at Lime? Tell us what's going on the job front.
Yeah, totally. So we got asked this question quite a lot. So first of all, I think it's super exciting to see that Lime is actually the fastest growing micromobility company. And also Lime is one of the fastest growing startup in the history. And also Lime is global, right? So we're now operating in 5 continents, 25 plus countries and then over 100 markets. And everything just happened within 2.5 years since we founded the company. And which means, what that means to the job seekers or people working at Lime is that, huge growth opportunity for people and for personal development. And also more importantly, I think it's the global impact and social impact that we're creating every day to the cities that we're living in around the globe. For example, reducing the congestion, reducing the pollution, and also just making the cities more livable. I still remember a few days ago, one of the old employees, shared his kind of interesting perspective with me about Lime. Is that, at his wildest guess, he would have never imagined that Lime is growing so fast at the global scale. And this is probably, the most important reason for people to work at Lime to create impact.
That is great to hear, Toby, and I definitely want to dive into some of those trends with you. But to begin, you used a word that some people on the stream might not be familiar with, micro-mobility. What exactly is that?
Yeah, totally. So Lime is, micro-mobility company that's providing, the light form of vehicle options like, bike sharing, scooter sharing, electric bicycle sharing. That's moving people for a short distance. And as you can imagine, right, so for people's daily commute or transportation, the short distance, 1 to 3 mile, radius mobility accounts for roughly 40 to 50% of the trips of people's daily commute. And that's something that we're solving. So if you go to most of the major cities now in the world, you'll see a lot of the lime green scooters and bikes sitting there, waiting for you to rent. And just on the tap of a button, you're able to get from A to B a lot faster and then at a cheaper way.
And given the excitement behind that technology, I'm sure a lot of people in the tech industry are looking to work at Lime. But are you pulling talent from other fields?
Yeah, let me put it this way. I would say Lime would not be where we are today if we're only kind of hiring people from only one sector or one discipline, right? So we're super excited to attract and then bring people from not just all of the different, disciplines, but also all around the world, right? So, for example, we have people joining us from, city governments. We have people who join us from the consumer product industry, like some of the big brands, Lululemon, Nike. Also, we have people who join us from, the more traditional retail. But more importantly, I think it's about the inclusive environment that we're trying to build at Lime, right? So at Lime, unlike many companies who probably has some, bad negative news, and then they start to create the internal employee resource group. And we actually started from very, very early days, and we feel like that's part of the DNA. So I think that's one of the reasons that we're attracting people from all over the world and from all of the different sectors.
And that DNA is growing quite quickly. You have over 200 positions open up on LinkedIn right now. Are there specific jobs that you are hiring rapidly right now, or perhaps trickier positions that you're having a hard time finding talent?
Yeah, always. I think hiring is, I would say, the number one priority for many teams and the leaders when they're talking about people. But of course, on top of that, I think the culture is a big part, right? So I think how do we make sure that we build a very robust culture that's sustaining, and then help people to realize how important their work is to the environment of the work, to the environment of the world is super important, right? So yes, we're hiring a lot of different people from many different cities around the world. So we hire people for our operation team, finance team, legal, communication, marketing, all sorts of different functions. And also we are continuously building the executive leadership team, right? So we're looking for a good head of product to help us to build better software and also hardware for people to use on a daily basis. We're also emphasizing on the safety and trust. So we're hiring a head of safety and trust. And also people is super important, right? So as I'm now still working a lot on the people and culture piece, I'm looking for a head of HR to help us to further that journey.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people on the stream would want to work at Lime. I'm looking at some of the questions right now, and they're flowing in. I'm going to take one right now from the stream from Michaela, who wants to know, you said that Lime is a fast-growing startup company. To what do you attribute that fast and steady growth?
Yeah, so I mean, from many aspects that investors are looking at, right? So it's about chips, it's about revenues, it's about the markets that we enter, but from internal, right? So I think we are community obsessed and user obsessed. So we care about how many users are using our service to solve their daily problem. How many users are using our service to commute from work to home, from school to work, right? So about 40% of our trips either start or end at the public transit. And many people actually started to use Lime, as a fun and cool thing, but now they're integrating the product as they're part of their daily routine. I think from that perspective, the user engagement and then the number of users that we're serving is something that we measure even more, internally. If you look at the App Store ranking around the globe now, right? So in over 25 countries that we're operating now. So we have been in the #1 position in the App Store ranking travel category, and also in many countries, we are even ranked in the overall App Store ranking #1. So that's quite amazing achievement by serving a lot of users around the globe.
That is very interesting to hear, and probably something that a lot of people on the stream wouldn't figure, given how many competitors you have. A lot of competitors who are owned by larger companies, including Uber. How are you continuing to grow given the small size of the company right now?
Yeah, so we welcome competition. I think this is a great thing for us to continue to improve and do better. I think the most important thing for us to hold true and hold strong is really, work on the product and supply chain, make sure that we always have the supply that people likes and people want to use for that kind of short distance for people to commute. And secondly, I think operation accuracy and precision is important. That's what we're focusing on in the past 12 months, making sure that when people are integrating Lime scooter into their daily commute pattern, right? So Lime scooter is, existed and at the right location, right time when people need it, right? So I think in order to do that right and faster than anybody else will put us in a, better position to earn the trust of the users.
And speaking of those users, I'm going to go ahead and take another question from the stream here from Kira Phillips, who wants to know, what does Lime look like for its employees? How does this company evolve to keep customers coming back?
Yeah, so it's been a really rewarding kind of experience for us to interact with so many users in our communities on a daily basis, right? So I think it's actually, when we talk about one of the value internally, it's not just about customers and users, because we know that they're super important. We want to make sure that we can solve that problem, but it's also about the entire community. If you think about Lime as a service, mobility service, right? So we're part of the infrastructure of many, many major cities now. People are relying on us, to get to work early, to get to work late. Sometimes, it's more convenient than most of the time, actually, it's more convenient than, driving, getting a ride share or walking, right? So, so to that perspective, I think it's just so important for us to keep continuing the product improvement, and also, beyond focusing on users, but also look at what the non-users care about, right? So how can we make sure we are also integrated part of their life? What does the city care about? How do we make sure that we can provide a solution that city thinks, hey, we're adding value, providing more kind of data to help them to do better urban planning? How do we make sure our employees on the ground are feeling more empowered to do the right thing for their local community? I think instead of saying that we're customers obsessed, we're quite community obsessed. I think that's something that sets us apart.
It's interesting that you bring up the cities. Let's talk about that, because the e-scooter companies have faced a lot of regulatory scrutiny when it comes to things like safety, making sure that these e-scooters are getting access to communities in a safe way. How is Lime trying to lead the front there with making sure that the cities where they are currently available, that it is a safe place for them to be?
Totally. Trust and safety is super important part. It's, one of the very top priority for the company. That's why, as I just said, we're hiring. We have established a trust and safety team internally, and we're hiring a head of trust and safety. So also, I think for safety, we've been, giving away a lot of, free helmets for people to use. And also, one of the very exciting programs we've been running at a global scale is the First Ride Festival, because we found out actually a lot of kind of incidents happened at the first time when people use it, right? So we want to help people to get familiar with how to use a scooter, how to use proper gesture to signal when they're trying to make a turn. So just make sure that people are riding scooter in a fun way when they first touch the scooter, right? So we've been, driving this program at a global level in all of the 25 countries, over 100 markets, at different scale. So that helps a lot. But I think it's going to be, ongoing process, working with the city. If you think about the cars, right? So when it first came out about 100 years ago, the cars are competing with the horses. There's no road. I think infrastructure is key. I think we're super excited to partner with many cities in the world to make sure that we are part of the urban planning process, so that we can provide tangible, anonymous data for them to do better planning in terms of creating more spaces for parking, more bike lane or scooter lane for people to ride safely, so that people are not riding on the sidewalk. I think there's a way that we can continue this good collaboration to do more to promote safety.
And you are raising a lot of capital right now to make sure that that footprint continues to grow. As you think about that capital, where are your priorities in terms of putting that money to work to make sure that Lime continues to be relevant moving forward?
Yeah, I would say two major things: product and people, right? So I think first and foremost, I think we want to make sure that people have the product when they need it, right? So it means the product needs to be reliable, needs to be well taken care of, needs to be clean and then well maintained. But also more importantly, I think the people behind it matters a lot. So starting from day one, we put a lot of emphasis on people. So we have a huge distributed workforce. As you can imagine, operating in over 100 markets in so many countries, in 5 continents, is not an easy job. And I think it is the people that makes all the product and great operation feasible to serve so many people in the world. And for us, I think continuously investing in people, talent, people development, management training that we just roll out internally at the company, and then also providing good long-term sustaining career paths for people around the world to work and grow with Lime is something that we're going to invest a lot more with the investment dollars.
Well, speaking of people, there are a lot of people on the stream who have questions right now for you, Toby, so I'm going to take a couple of them right now. One of them is, what is your dream city to launch a scooter in?
Yeah, I would say many, many cities. So even though we're live in 100 cities, but I think the world is still wide open for us. If you think about the number of people who have used scooter or using scooter nowadays, it's less than 1%, which means 99% of the population of the world haven't even tried a scooter, right? So, which means London, New York, Tokyo, many markets, the people live there kind of suffer from the heavy congested situation and also pollution, right? So we wish with the green, electrified scooters and many more, innovative product we're going to bring to the markets, all these major markets, all the people living in the urban environment can benefit from it.
And before I let you go, Toby, for those who are on the stream right now and maybe want to work at Lime, what advice would you give them? Who are you looking for?
Totally. So first and foremost, I highly recommend you check out the Lime LinkedIn page. There is a lot of openings, and also Lime website, li.me career websites. I'm sure there is interesting positions for you. But more importantly, I think I would encourage you to ask one thing: if you want to work on a global problem, that's complex, right? So imagine that we're really moving the needles for people to move from A to B way more efficient, way more faster, way more, way cheaper than before. How do we make sure that people in every single corner of the world can experience that? That require the precision of operation, that require the drive, of bringing the product to more markets, and then being able to work collaboratively with the local communities and cities. I think if you have that drive and that vision, Lime is the right place for you.
Well, Toby, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Are you interested in working at a top startup like Lime? Well, right now you're going to get some advice from some career coaches who can walk you through exactly how to do that. We'll be right back.
Secret to framing your skills is to figure out how to tell the story.
Redefining your story and your own personal narrative to get you to that next job is actually the key step to get you to that next job.
If you're going to jump into this next thing that you really want to do, how do you reframe that? How do you think about the new narrative? What's the story of you?
I think this is a great opportunity, remembering that these transitions are meant to happen. Something was needing to change for you, and just accept that. Give yourself a chance to really reinvent and not limit yourself by what you were in the past. And be really clear on what you want.
And then also, what are things I want to kind of stay away from that I realized those didn't really suit me and I didn't really love those things? Write down a set of stories where you felt very successful. Those stories are going to give you clues to what you want to go do next, and also begin to help you rewrite that narrative of yourself to then seek out and lead you to the next opportunity.
Well, that ends up being a question that is really core to the idea of what motivated you in the first place in the last job that you have. How do you want to expand on that in this next role?
And as you're looking for opportunities, put yourself in employers' shoes and figure out what is it that they are really looking for.
When you get the job application and it's a list of skills, it's not that exciting and it's not that differentiating. People buy stories. So whatever your skill is, find a way to tell a story. It has a start, it has a middle, it has a finish. Create some context so your skills can really shine.
And then I'd finally make sure that you reach out in a way of service. How can you give back with what you know and what you've been able to do in the work that you've been producing all your life? How can we really have an impact on someone else, and that really can fill up that vessel and make you start to think in ways that you might make a bigger contribution after you've touched somebody else's life?
You're applying for a job, you're thinking, I'm too young, I'm too old. We all go into a job conversation with a gremlin in our head, a conversation going, here are the reasons why you are not suitable for this job.
When you're going through a job interview, there are plenty of reasons why you're not perfect for this job. It's important for you to get your own mindset right.
Ask yourself, wow, what is it about that? Where do I even get that thought? And maybe there's a limiting belief about ourselves. Is there really a fact-based, data-based reason that would limit you? You may have had some opinion that you formed for some reason and maybe not be valid, and give yourself permission to let it go.
It's really about the way that you can show up to provide a solution. You can't change the way you appear except to try to do the best job in terms of the way you dress for success. And the biggest deal here is that that's not about you. It's about being able to come there and solve a problem for them.
You're coming to the table with a unique basket of skills and strengths and talents, and that's what you want to showcase.
Now I have a simple technique for this. I call it the this, not that technique. I have 5 pairs of words that on one side is me at my best, and on the other side is me when I'm slightly off my game. I want to be curious, not a know-it-all. I want to be generous, not mean. And when I find myself under pressure, I go to that pairing on the other side and go, this is what I'm like at my best. How do I show up like that to give myself the best chance of selling myself in the interview?
And then if they're looking for someone younger, like because they think that you're not technologically savvy enough, you want to showcase that you have the technical savvy that's going to get you to where you need to be. If they're looking for someone older because like somehow you're inexperienced, you want to showcase your maturity and your drive to learn and your ability to learn quickly, as well as any relevant experience you have. That's how you want to think about all gaps in your background that are going to get in the way of landing this job.
Whether you're the youngest or whether you're the oldest, if you want to do the job, you're passionate, you're committed, you've got the skill set, you should feel confident, and your confidence will breed confidence in your interviewer.
So that has to wrap up today's show. I want to thank our guest, Steph Korey, for joining us in New York City, as well as Toby Sun in our Sunnyvale studio. On behalf of the LinkedIn editorial team, we'd like to thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us today. I'm Caroline Fairchild. We'll see you next time.